Will Goldstein here, thekingscourt.com. Another chance to subscribe by hitting that little button down there if you like these videos. Bring some other people. More people will come. Anyway, so also there's always a chance while you're here to look on the About page. You'll see links there, and that's links to my music if you want to check into my music. So the series that we're still in is World Unity series, and this is number 13. And the title of this video is Traditional African Religions. Subtitle would be Ancestor Worship and Animism as a Way of Life. So adherents of traditional religions in Africa are distributed among 43 countries and are estimated to number over 100 million. Even though most Africans today are adherents of Christianity or Islam, still the African people often combine the practice of their traditional beliefs with the practice of Abrahamic religions. Thus Christianity and Islam were essentially ancient brothers. So these two Abrahamic religions are widespread across Africa, though mostly concentrated in different areas. They are replacing indigenous African religions, but are often adapted to African culture, cultural context, and belief systems. They are different in nature, since Abrahamic religious beliefs are essentially monotheistic, the belief in a single creator God. But these religions were introduced into traditionally polytheistic African religions rather early, creating in some cases a sort of synthesis. Traditional African practices are highly diverse, so they're not all the same across the board, including various ethnic religions with oral traditions passed down from one generation to another by means of folk tales, songs, and festivals that promote beliefs in spirits and higher and lower gods, sometimes a supreme being, as well as veneration of the dead, use of magic, and traditional African medicines. Most religions are based on animism, the belief that natural objects, natural phenomena, and the universe itself have souls. So everything has a soul. Most of these groups, in a form of animistic shamanism, paid reverence to the primal spirits of the elements and the wilderness. They also include various polytheistic aspects that are characterized by belief in or worship of more than one god or spirit, and pantheistic aspects believing that God exists and is the same as all things, animals, and people within the universe. So God is nature, and that the universe and the cosmos are essentially identical to divinity, to supreme entity. So they're all, everything in nature is God. God is nature, nature is God. The physical universe is thus understood as an immanent deity, still expanding and creating, which has existed since the beginning of time. And so the role of humanity is generally seen as one of harmonizing nature with the supernatural. Followers of traditional African religions have migrated around the world. In recent times, religions such as the Yoruba religion, which has an elaborate hierarchy of deities, including a supreme creator and some 400 lesser gods and spirits. Most of them are associated with their own cults and priests. And this movement is on the rise, the Yoruba movement, finding roots in the islands of the Caribbean and portions of Central and South America. In the United States, voodoo, a religion that holds memories of Africa and Haiti's past. They believe that there's a spirit in everything, in every tree, in the sun, in the sea, and that if you understand voodoo, you can talk to these spirits. They are more predominant in the states along the Gulf of Mexico, probably places like Louisiana or something like that. But maybe I only know that from movies. So, basic animistic beliefs. Animistic beliefs build the core concept of traditional African religions that includes worship of tutelary deities who they serve as a protector, guardian, or patron. So they're paying homage to this tutelary deity. And this involves nature worship, ancestor worship, and the belief in an afterlife, comparable to other traditional nature religions around the world, such as Japanese Shinto or traditional European paganism. So the similarities across the board between those as far as that goes. Ancestor worship. So while some religions adopted a pantheistic worldview with a supreme creator god next to other gods and spirits, others follow a purely polytheistic system with various gods, spirits, and other supernatural beings. Traditional African religions also have elements of totemism, a system of belief in which humans are said to have kinship or a mystical relationship with a spirit being, such as an animal or even a plant. The totem is thought to interact with a given kin group or an individual and to serve as their emblem or symbol. They also have elements of shamanism, which involves a belief that shamans, with a connection to the other world, have the power to heal the sick, communicate with spirits, and escort souls of the dead to the afterlife. So now we're getting into ancestor worship primarily, so at least for a while. So African religions believe in ancestor worship that includes burial of the dead with ceremony and pomp. So they make a big deal out of it, as they believe in eternal existence of the souls of their dead ancestors. By periodic remembrance of ancestors, they influence the affairs of their living descendants, and this also includes the veneration of relics. Traditional African religion believes in guidance from their ancestors' spirits. So there are spiritual leaders and kinds of priests essential to the spiritual and religious survival of the community. There are mystics that are responsible for healing and divining, a kind of fortune telling and counseling similar to shamans. These traditional healers have to be called by ancestors or gods. They undergo strict training and learn many necessary skills, including how to use natural herbs for healing and other more mystical skills like the finding of a hidden object without knowing where it is. Traditional African religion believes that ancestors maintain a spiritual connection with their living relatives. Most ancestral spirits are generally good and kind. Negative actions taken by ancestral spirits is to cause minor illness, to warn people that they have gotten onto the wrong path. So they're looking out for you and trying to guide you back on the path. Deceased humans and animals still exist in the spirit world, and it can influence or interact with the physical world, even animals. Wow. Forms of polytheism was widespread in most of ancient African and other regions of the world before the introduction of Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. So it was there long before those were introduced. An exception was the short-lived monotheistic religion created by Pharaoh Akhenaten, who made it mandatory to pray to his personal god Aten, which I did a whole video on that. This remarkable change, having to do with the Egyptians, this remarkable change to traditional Egyptian religion was, however, reverted by his youngest son, Tutankhamun. High gods, along with other more specialized deities, ancestor spirits, territorial spirits, and beings, are a common theme among traditional African religions, highlighting the complex and advanced culture of ancient Africa. Some research suggests that certain monotheistic concepts, such as the belief in a high god or force next to many other gods, deities, and spirits, sometimes seen as intermediaries between humans and the Creator, were present within Africa before the introduction of Abraham religions. So there was some concept of a supreme deity before Abraham religions. These indigenous concepts were different from the monotheism found in Abraham religions. So there was monotheistic ideas, but different. Traditional African medicine is directly linked to African religions and are united by animism, the belief that objects, places, and creatures all possess a distinct spiritual essence. Animism perceives all things, animals, plants, rocks, rivers, weather systems, human handiwork, and in some cases, words, as animated and alive, and belief in spirits and ancestors is the most important aspect of African religions, and that these gods or spirits were either self-created or evolved from spirits or ancestors which got worshipped by the people. So they generally hold the belief of life after death in a spirit world or realms where spirits and gods reside, a concept akin to reincarnation, so that deceased humans may reincarnate back into their family lineage, affecting what they do. There are similarities between traditional African religions who venerate ancestors through rituals and worship the land or a divinity through regional cults or shrine cults that involve ancestral ghost spirits as an integral part of reality, though ancestors are generally believed to reside in an ancestral realm or spirit world, while some believe that the ancestors can become equal in power to deities. So there's a possibility that they can rise up in the ranks and become deities. So ancestors are believed to occupy a higher level of existence than living human beings and are believed to be able to bestow either blessings or illness upon their living descendants. Wow, blessings or curses, like from God, from the ancestors. Ancestors can offer advice and bestow good fortune and honor to their descendants, but they can also make demands, insisting that their shrines be properly maintained or they're worshipped, so that the deceased still play a role in the lives of their living descendants. Olumpona rejects the Western Islamic definition of monotheism and says that such concepts could not reflect the complex African traditions and are too simplistic. While some traditions have a supreme deity next to other deities, others have not. Monotheism does not reflect the multiplicity of ways that the traditional African spirituality has conceived of deities, gods, and spirit beings. He summarizes that traditional African religions are not only religions, but a worldview, a way of life. So now concerning ceremonies. West and Central African religious practices generally manifest themselves in communal ceremonies or divinatory rites in which members, overcome by some force, are excited to the point of going into meditative trance in response to rhythmic drumming or singing, as the drumming or instrumental rhythms played by these different musicians are given by a deity or ancestor, so that the participants embody a deity or ancestor, and therefore the energy or state of mind by performing distinct ritual movements or dances further enhances their elevated consciousness. So the ancestors are kind of possessing, so to speak, these musicians, and so they go into this ecstatic trance. When this trance-like state is witnessed and understood, adherents are privy to a way of contemplating the pure or symbolic embodiment of a particular mindset, helping them to build skills at separating the feelings elicited by this mindset from their daily life, so that the nature and sources of pure energy or feelings serves to help participants manage and accept the mundane, facilitating better control and transformation of these energies into positive, appropriate behavior in terms of thought and speech. In these trances, words interpreted by a culturally educated initiate or diviner can provide insight and into appropriate direction which the community or individual might take in accomplishing its goal. So it's a kind of like a relief from the mundane world, so they can go into this trance and have relations with ancestors and into an ecstatic state that's a release from the daily life that they normally do. So spirits, followers of traditional African religions, pray to various spirits as well as to their ancestors, including elements of nature. So they pray to elements of nature, animal spirits, powerful spirits and gods, including high gods and a large amount of lower gods and spirits. There are also some religions with a single supreme being, and some recognize a dual god and goddess, such as Mawulisa. Afterlife can pertain to one or more spirit worlds. So there's not just one spirit world, could be many. Practices and rituals. So deities and spirits are honored through libation or sacrifice of animals, vegetables, cooked food, flowers, semi-precious stones, and precious metals. These are offerings that they're doing. The will of the gods or spirits is sought by the believer through consulting divinities or divination, a method for obtaining knowledge not obtainable by normal means, including the past, the future, and the state of the dead, ways to propitiate ancestors and spirits, and the nature of the cosmos. So that's divination. Traditional African religions embrace and are attuned to natural phenomena such as ebb and tide, waxing and waning moon, rain and drought, and rhythmic patterns intertwined with the natural phenomena and environment like weather, thunder, lightning, rain, day, moon, sun, stars, and so on, that are responsible for providing people with their daily needs. In the Sera religion, S-E-R-E-R, one of the most sacred stars in the cosmos is called Yunkir, the star of Sirius. Here we go back to Sirius again, Egypt and Sirius. With a long farming tradition, the Sera high priest and priestesses, Saltike, deliver yearly sermons at the Exua ceremony, a divination ceremony, and Fatik before Yunkir's phase in order to predict winter months and enable farmers to start planting. So they're tuning into that spirit to assist them with their agricultural pursuits. Divination, more on divination. There is no single technique of casting divination that may be done with small objects such as bones, cowrie shells, stones, strips of leather, or flat pieces of wood, and are often done using sacred divination plates made of wood or performed on the ground, often within a circle. In some societies, many people seek out diviners on a regular basis. And a diviner, also known as priest, is also sought for their wisdom as counselors in life and for their knowledge of herbal medicine. Now we're into virtue and vice. Virtue is often connected with obligations regarding social behaviors such as respect for parents and elders, raising children appropriately, providing hospitality, being honest, trustworthy, and courageous. And in some cases, morality is associated with obedience or disobedience to God regarding the way a person or a community lives. For the Kikuyu, their primary supreme creator, Najai, acting through lesser deities, is believed to speak to and be capable of guiding the virtuous person as one's conscience. In many cases, Africans who have converted to other religions have still kept up their traditional customs and practices, combining them in a syncretic way of synthesis, basically. Religious persecution. So traditional African religions have faced persecution from Christians and Muslims. Adherents of these religions have been forcefully converted to Islam and Christianity, demonized and marginalized. The atrocities include killings, waging war, destroying of sacred places, and other atrocities. Caused by these persecutions and discrimination, but also by incompatibility with traditional society, culture, and native beliefs. The Dinka people largely rejected or ignored Islamic and Christian Abrahamic teachings because of these kinds of atrocities. I didn't look into what Islam had done because I'm a Christian, and but I did look into some of the Christian persecution, and I find this kind of thinking appalling because force should never be used as a conversion technique. The results, as shown, should be enough to persuade others that this method only turns people away. And now, having done more harm than good, they have in a sense dug their own grave with their impatience and ignorance, while completely disregarding the teachings of Christ. Reason, invitation, and the work of the Holy Spirit is what leads people to God. And in my case, being a Christian, that means to Christ. So here is some of the unfortunate events that have happened with their foreseeable outcome by anyone with a rational thinking mind and virtuous mind could have foretold. The early Christians, and now we're getting into what these Christians did, some of them. So the early Christians of Niger Delta, who were against the customs and traditions of the indigenous tribes, carried out atrocities such as destroying their shrines and killing the sacred monitor lizards. The European colonization of Africa is noted to have paved the way of Christian missionaries into Africa. In some cases, the leaders of traditional African religions were persecuted by the missionaries and regarded as the devil's agents. Christ and the teachings of Christ is to all people of the world, and that it's an invitation, but these people are just living according to their customs and the way they've always lived. And that's natural to them, so of course they're going to continue with that. The only way they would ever not continue with that is if they saw something that seemed to them more universal to all mankind, and that was an attraction that had some merit beyond the merit that they already have. So a further example of persecution by missionaries is how many of the earliest Christian missionaries to the Shona people of modern-day Zimbabwe desecrated shrines. This kind of stuff never works. Located in Montangeni, harassed Shona priests and decried Maori, the Shona god, as being a fake and inept god. So look, whether that is a fake or inept god, I'm not going to make any judgments about that. I'm just going to say this kind of thinking never works. Force never works, especially in religion. People come to religions because they see some value in it, maybe beyond. If somebody converts from one religion to the other, it would only be because they would see some value in it that extended beyond the current value that they already have in their religion. This persecution continued until the Shona were completely prevented from worshiping their god, Maori, at Motange. Despite attempts at tolerance and inter-religious dialogue in many Christian churches, there was a belief that everything African seems to be pagan. I don't know. And some argue that this view remains today in certain evangelical Pentecostal religious positions. The historical view that Africans had to become civilized by colonialism and Christian missionary activity likely contributed to the intolerance of traditional religions during the colonial period. These views culminated in some colonials rejecting that traditional African faiths were proper religions. I just find that rather appalling and disgusting, disgraceful, and I do not believe that that is the teaching of, say, Jesus Christ. I call myself, I am a Christian, but I would prefer to call myself a follower of the way, which is interesting, is the way is associated with Lao Tzu, and Taoism. But, that's what it means, way. But before Christians were called Christians, they were called the way before that. They were first called Christians in Antioch. But before that, it was the way. And the way is not really even Christian. The way is, in my belief system, and the original belief system, was Jesus Christ and who he is and what he did on the cross, his very own nature as being God-man. That is the way. Not a prophet, God-man. That is the way. He said, no one comes to the Father except by me. Those are the actual words of Jesus Christ. Those are his actual words. So why would anyone say that he was just a prophet? He never said he was a prophet. He would deny outright that he was a prophet. He is believed to be the Son of God. It's not a matter of religion. There are people who believe in Jesus who are not Christian. For example, Messianic Jews. It's all about who is Jesus Christ, not about Christianity, Judaism, Islam, because they all have their beliefs. But the truth is, from my point of view at least, is that Jesus Christ is the Son of God.